Hello, and thanks for coming to my show. If you don't already know, this show is done in themed seasons, and we're on Season 18, Killer Kids. If you like this channel, not necessarily the crimes, you can hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel for weekly stories. You can also check out my other channel, Somewhere Sinister, which isn't entirely true crime, more true crime adjacent. A link is in the description. Thanks. Ann Maguire had been teaching at Corpus Christi Catholic College for 40 years and was planning to retire in 2014. Over the decades, she had become a beloved teacher by all of the students. Well, except for one. Will Cornick had developed a completely irrational hatred of the teacher and decided his only option was to kill her. This is Monsters. William Cornick was born on June 26, 1998 in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England. His mother, Michelle, worked as a human resources manager and was devoted to Will and his older brother, Zach. His father, Ian, was a council executive living with his partner and their young child in an upmarket village near Leeds. Despite his parents' divorce a decade earlier, Will appeared to enjoy a happy home life. Later, a psychiatrist would say his parents were, quote, entirely responsible and caring people. Will was an intelligent and academically gifted student. He passed 5 GCSE exams a year earlier and had a 100% attendance record at Corpus Christi Catholic College. Teachers described him as amicable, enthusiastic, and conscientious. He had no criminal record and wasn't subject to scrutiny by social services. However, his behavior began to change in the months leading up to the murder. At the age of 12, Will was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which shattered his dream of joining the British Army. That diagnosis seemed to trigger a significant shift in his attitude and behavior. He began harboring intense anger towards his Spanish teacher, Ann Maguire. Ann Connor was born on April 5, 1953. She grew up in a loving family with her parents Esther and Joseph Connor. Ann's passion for education was evident from a young age, and she had always dreamed of becoming a teacher. In 1972, at the age of 19, Ann met Don Maguire, who owned a landscaping business at the time of her death. They shared a beautiful and loving relationship, eventually tying the knot and building a family together. Ann and Dawn had 2 daughters, Carrie and Emma, and they also adopted Ann's sister's sons after her sister's unfortunate passing. That act of compassion showcased Ann's caring nature and her commitment to family. Ann's teaching career was nothing short of remarkable. She joined Corpus Christi Catholic College in Leeds as a student teacher and remained there for over 4 decades. Her dedication to the school and its students was unwavering, as she taught Spanish and she served as the head of Year 11 for more than 10 years. Throughout her 40-year tenure, Ann taught 3 generations of pupils, including some of the parents of her current students. Her impact on the school was so profound that she was often described as the heart of the school. Ann's commitment to education extended beyond the classroom, as she always put the needs of the children first and never gave up on pupils, even when they may have given up on themselves. One student, Lucy Potter, would leave a heartfelt note for the teacher after her death that read in part, quote, "You always believed in me and took the time and effort to make sure I achieved the best I could. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you. Such a caring woman who only wanted the best for each and every pupil." Ann had been planning to retire in September of 2014. Will's hatred for Ann had been brewing for years. In Year 8, he developed an entirely irrational animosity towards her. That coincided with his diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, which significantly impacted his mood and personality. His hatred bubbled further when Ann banned him from a school trip because he hadn't completed his schoolwork. It turned out that Will ignored her and went on the trip anyway, but he still resented the teacher for punishing him. When he attended a parents' meeting at the school with his mother and father, Will refused to meet or talk with Mrs. Maguire. He could literally not even stand being in the same room as her. His dislike of Ann was beginning to dominate his life, and he could barely think of anything else. Will's online presence revealed a darker side, with images of knives on his phone and a Grim Reaper profile picture on Facebook. He openly discussed murdering Mrs. Maguire with friends, even messaging about it on social media. On Christmas Eve of 2013, Will sent messages to a friend on Facebook discussing his plan to brutally kill Ann. Unfortunately, his friends dismissed his behavior as mere frustration, believing it was just, quote, Will being Will. Students would later say that Will would doodle in class, drawing pictures of dead teachers covered in blood. On April 28, 2014, Will brought knives and a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey to school, intending to use it to celebrate afterwards. Before the attack, he showed a kitchen knife to a fellow pupil, asking if they wanted to see how sharp it was. Will winked and smiled at the student before leaving the room. About 30 minutes into Ann's Spanish class, Will walked into the room. Ann was leaning over a student's desk helping with an assignment, and the 15-year-old didn't hesitate before he started repeatedly stabbing the teacher. By then, Will was already 6 foot 2 inches or 188 centimeters, and Ann was only 5 foot 2 or 152 centimeters. Will attacked Ann from behind, stabbing her repeatedly in the back and neck. Susan Francis, another teacher at Corpus Christi Catholic College, heard screams and went to investigate. As she ran down the hall, Ann stumbled out of her classroom, followed by Will, who was still stabbing her. Susan managed to get Ann away from her attacker and into an empty classroom, jamming her foot in the door in order to keep Will out. Susan would later say, quote, I just remember his face having no emotion on it, none at all. It was like a mask on his face, no emotion. Another teacher called emergency services, and by the time an ambulance arrived at the school, Ann had lost too much blood. Her jugular had been severed, and she lost consciousness in the ambulance, eventually dying at the hospital. At the same time, Will just sat down and said to the nearby students, quote, Good times. 2 teachers escorted him to the lobby to wait for police, where he was taken into custody with no issues. Due to Will's composed demeanor despite his violent act, the judge ordered an extensive psychiatric evaluation. He confessed to having suicidal thoughts, but ultimately redirected his violent intentions toward Mrs. Maguire. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with psychopathic tendencies, noting his gross lack of empathy and a degree of callousness rarely seen in clinical practice. Will told the psychiatrist, quote, I wanted to get caught. That's why I did it in school. I wanted to be in jail. I wasn't in shock. I was happy. I had a sense of pride. I still do. I know it's uncivilized, but I know it's incredibly instinctual and human. Past generations of life, killing is a route of survival. It's kill or be killed. I did not have a choice. It was kill her or suicide. I know the victim's family will be upset, but I don't care. I couldn't give a shit. The doctor warned that Will posed an immediate and unpredictable risk of grave homicidal violence. Will Cornick would end up pleading guilty to the murder. During the legal proceedings, the court heard that Will had spent the previous 3 years planning to murder Ann Maguire. None of his teachers or his parents saw any signs that he was planning to kill Ann. The weekend before the murder, he attended a birthday party for his grandmother, and people in attendance said that Will was polite and seemed happy. In a later interview with the student Will had shown the knife to earlier that day, he said he wished he had reported what he had seen. He wonders if the tragedy could have been prevented if he had spoken up. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, and there were a number of people who could have reported Will for the things he had said about planning to kill Ann, but like other cases, many youths don't generally believe a teenager is seriously going to commit murder, and in reality, they're usually correct. Like many people had stated, Will did well in school and had a pretty good home life. His parents have remained confused as to what happened that caused their son to become a killer. Will Cornick was sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in prison. He was warned that he may never be released by a judge who found his pride and lack of remorse over his actions, quote, truly grotesque. Will appealed his sentence, but it was quickly denied in January of 2015. His father has said that Will was sorry for what he had done and was trying to be a good person, but his callous behavior after the crime makes that hard for most people to believe. In November of 2017, a jury inquest was held to question why Will's peers didn't report him after he had threatened the teacher and brought a knife to school. Ann's husband, Don, said, quote, "During the inquest, we have heard teachers, police officers, and Ofsted inspectors all trying to speculate why no student reported the fact of a 34-centimeter knife being brought into school accompanied by threats to kill a teacher. None of those adults have been able to explain why it was not reported." In an effort to try and reduce these types of crimes, some began calling for social media companies to introduce contracts that would make parents responsible for their children's online activity, hoping that would make online threats like Will's more visible to parents. At the end of the day, nobody is responsible for Ann's murder but Will Cornick. It's possible that she could have been saved if someone had spoken up about Will's behavior, and hopefully in the future, more kids will speak up when they experience disturbing behavior by a peer. But Will made the decision that murdering Ann was something that he needed to do. Then, like a monster, he acted on those thoughts, taking her life and claiming to be happy about it. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave us a comment. You can check out our other show, Somewhere Sinister, on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.